Rape and sexual assault are serious crimes in India. The country has seen a year-on-year rise of crime against women since 2015, except the pandemic year. According to the National Health Survey of India, between 2019 and 2021, 14% women sought help after any form of physical or sexual violence. Only 2.4% of them went to a doctor. 77% of them have never sought help or told anyone about the violence. I set out to speak to sexual assault survivors and their families in Delhi and Mumbai to understand the kind of healthcare treatment they have received and why rape and sexual assault is a public health crisis. Meena meets me at a crowded urban village in the outskirts of Delhi. Her 16-year-old daughter was allegedly repeatedly assaulted for months by the child's paternal uncle in 2014. It wasn't until 5 years later that Meena learned what her child had gone through. Her daughter was only 7.
बताती थी, मारता था, बुरी तरीके से मार मार के बोलता था ये ऐसे कर वैसे कर, अपने कपड़े खोल। हम तो यही सोचते थे कि बच्चा ऐसे ही बीमार हो रहा है।
जब आपको पता चला, क्या डॉक्टर ने क्या बोला आपको?
नहीं, डॉक्टर ने ये बोला कि देखो आपका ये 5-6 साल पुराना केस हो गया है ना बच्चे के साथ, पहले की बात है, इसलिए वो मेडिकल में आएगा तो नहीं, क्योंकि वो नया नहीं है और बच्चा दिमागी टॉर्चर हुआ है। पहले तो डर डर के हमारे खड़ी हो जाती थी, अब तो धीरे धीरे मतलब उसको सर पे हाथ लगा लगा के सुलाना पड़ता है।
The central government brought in guidelines for healthcare professionals 2 years after the Nirbhaya gangrape that took the country by storm in 2012. The guidelines state the first response of a healthcare professional should be to provide physical and psychological aid after due consent, which is to check for injuries or infections, to make survivors feel safe, being non-judgmental and supportive. Any procedure that's required for legal purposes, including collecting samples, should not take precedence over ensuring the survivor gets physical and mental health support first. Most of the survivors I spoke to weren't offered counseling. They in fact had to seek out an NGO for help.
तो आपने काउंसलिंग फिर से
मैं CWC में वहाँ पे भी कॉल करी थी, बात करी थी, तो वहाँ पे जो पहले की जो मैडम थी वो कह रही नहीं, अब हमारा ना वहाँ से ट्रांसफ़र कहीं और हो गया है, तो हम वहाँ पे अब हम नहीं हैं। ऐसे मेरे साथ हुआ, तो वहाँ से भी मेरे को कोई हेल्प नहीं मिली। एक दिन वहाँ पे जाके बैठे रहे, फिर उसने नेक्स्ट दूसरी डेट डाल दी, बोल रहे नहीं आप ना बाद में आना। बाद में गए तो फिर बोल रहे बाद में आना। ऐसे होता था हमारे साथ, फिर मैंने जाना बंद कर दिया।
Survivors commonly develop mental health issues such as anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Like Meena's daughter did for many years, they suffer in silence due to stigma, shame, fear, and isolation.
We did a big study with the healthcare providers a few years ago, and they were very clear. Their role was clinical examination, collecting evidence, and then they primarily said that if the woman requires counseling, then she needs to be referred to someone who can provide that kind of long-term counseling.
A 2019 survey by MSF or Doctors Without Borders in Delhi's Jahangirpuri found that fear of disrespectful and undignified treatment by healthcare professionals was one of the main reasons survivors avoided accessing healthcare. I'm on my way to meet Chitra, a domestic violence victim in Mumbai. Her husband allegedly regularly beats her up, and she's undergone 2 abortions since getting married in 2011. She's agreed to speak to me on the phone in the presence of her counselor.
अभी भी मैं डॉक्टर के पास गई तो उन्होंने वही बोला।
क्या बोले?
यही बोला कि शादीशुदा ऐसा होता है, तो फिर आपने ऐसा क्यों करवा रहे? तो मैं अभी क्या कर सकती हूँ? मैं कैसे रखूँ?
तो क्या बोलते हैं, कॉम्प्रोमाइज करना है?
हाँ, यही बोलते, सारे के सारे यही बोलते। अब वहाँ पे मैं कैंप में मेरे को दो हफ्ता एडमिट, 1 महीना एडमिट रखेंगे, तो मैं मेरे बच्चे का क्या करूँ? वो सोच के फिर मैं प्राइवेट में जाने का सोचती हूँ, लेकिन म्युनिसिपल में वो लोग इतना बोलते कि मैं गई थी सुबह 8:30 बजे। कितने बजे आई? रात के 8:30 बजे गए। सुबह गई 9 बजे, रात के 8:30 बजे। सोनोग्राफी रिपोर्ट के लिए मेरा पैर पूरा, मुंह पूरा मेरा सूज गया।
The Women and Child Development Ministry set up one-stop crisis centers, also called as Sakhi centers, to provide everything under one roof: police, legal and medical help. There are 704 such centers across India, including 11 in Delhi. I visited 6 of them. What I found largely was that some of the centers were difficult to access, some did not have survivors at all, but what I was told at all of these centers is that the majority number of cases are either missing, promise to marry or domestic violence cases. They of course tell me that all the assistance is given in one center, but of course the police is involved in every case that is registered.
You see, as far as the Sakhi centers are concerned, first of all, how many of them are there? Are they adequate? Number two, how much information about those centers are available to normal people? The community, the women in the community. And then also, how many people would like to go to Sakhi centers? Actually, it should have been the other way around. When the cases are reported, Sakhi center must be informed by the police and their counselor must arrive at the hospital if there is need, or at the family, or at the point where they are needed the most.
In Mumbai, the Dilasa centers were set up by the city's municipal government along with NGO Sehat to bridge this gap by providing care within municipal hospitals. These centers, however, have fixed work timings, which means no staff after hours or on weekends, leaving survivors with a helpline. The other challenge that comes up with rape cases is when minors are involved. Reporting a case is mandatory under the POCSO Act. While this sends out a strong message that child abuse is unacceptable, there are concerns around confidentiality.
We have survivors coming to us who are actually sort of like the violence happened maybe a bunch of years back, but their trauma is resurfacing and they're not able to understand why. And when it happened with them, they could not talk about it because we all understand the stigma associated with the context. If a person is not okay after what has happened to him or her, how do you expect that person to go through the traumatic legal procedures?
Sangeeta Rege, director of Sehat, an NGO in Mumbai, says health professionals at all levels need to be trained to take a survivor-centered approach while treating sexual assault survivors.
The entire piece of rape examination in young women and girls is relegated to the gynecology department because it is to do with examination of genitals. Gynecologists are often extremely busy, and really a rape survivor is not their immediate priority unless she has a life-threatening bleeding or something like that. Now these gynecologists are carrying out deliveries, they are running between difficult C-sections and so on. The point being that the law says any MBBS doctor can do these examinations, and yet time and again we see that it's only the gynecologists who are relegated this kind of examination.
Doctors tell me there is immense pressure to focus on collecting evidence for investigation.
मेरे पास अभी अचानक से यहाँ कुछ हो जाए और मेरे पास एक पेशेंट आए तो मैं टच करने से पहले डरूंगी, मुझे लगेगा कि आपको पुलिस कंप्लेंट करानी है, क्योंकि मुझे ऐसा ना लगे कि मैंने कोई ऐसा एविडेंस जिस मेरी वजह से जल्दबाजी में कुछ चला गया है, क्योंकि वो भी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. तो यूजुअली गवर्नमेंट डॉक्टर्स इसके लिए ट्रेंड होते हैं, नॉर्मली प्राइवेट डॉक्टर्स इंटरवीन करने से डरते हैं.
The process of collecting evidence is not sensitive either. Survivors are often subjected to intrusive questions and invasive methods like the two-finger test. In this test, the medical practitioner sticks 2 fingers in the vagina of a rape victim to determine if the hymen is broken and test the laxity of the vagina. In October last year, the Supreme Court came down heavily on the usage of the test, despite it being banned in 2013.
But yet, comments on hymen continue. That the hymen is torn, there is an old tear, there are old tags. Now what happens is a doctor may write it just as a finding, But the point is that when you write an old tear on an old tag to hymen, it is interpreted as a girl or a woman was sexually active. That is why she has this old tears and tags. So it is irrelevant to the current examination of rape that is taken place.
In 2015, MSF set up a clinic for survivors of sexual and gender-based violence in Delhi's Jammu. The clinic acts like a crisis center with counselors and doctors. Interestingly, it has enlisted the help of the community healthcare workers who are known as Asha workers in the area to help spread awareness about the service.
आशास का क्या है कि वो उसी कम्युनिटी से आती हैं और बहुत सालों से वहाँ पे एज एन आशा काम कर रहे हैं, तो उनके बोलने पर लाइक 10 नहीं 20 30 इजीली वुमेन्स इकट्ठी हो जाती हैं.
In December last year, headlines across newspapers read, "What has changed in 10 years since the Nirbhaya gangrape case?" Candlelight vigils and protests in 2012 led to massive reforms in the rape laws. Medico-legal guidelines were also introduced. 2017 Human Rights Watch report said only 9 out of 28 states and union territories have adopted the 2014 medico-legal guidelines. I reached out to the Women and Child Development and Health Ministries for the story, but they hadn't responded at the time of publishing this video. But much is left to be done. Medical personnel at all levels of public and private healthcare system need to be trained in soft skills so that they don't dive straight to sample collection. The one-stop crisis center model needs to be redirected to benefit the survivor. And finally, there needs to be greater awareness of physical and psychological consequences of sexual assault.